This is going to be a relatively long camping story, told by somebody who doesn't speak English as a native language. So please, be understanding. Romania is a country where people might get kidnapped, murdered, disappear and such. So yeah, my parents were legitimately afraid for me and were very against the idea. I had to lie to them and say that we would stay in a hotel near a national park just so they would get off my back. Obviously, that is not what we did. So, long story short, we had to travel from around this area to this park, which was around 200 kilometers in a 2-hour train ride. We got our immense backpacks, everything we needed, and went on our way. Nothing specifically happened in the train, except for the fact the train was overly crowded, with the exception of our train compartment being completely empty. That is extremely rare for Romanian trains. I got excited, thinking that we had that whole compartment all to ourselves. As I said, it is a very rare thing to happen. Of course, after 10 to 20 minutes goes by, it got occupied by a man entering our compartment, accompanied by a beautiful German shepherd. I love all kinds of animals, cats and dogs in particular. I usually find my way around to all animals, even those that people I don't like. Not this dog, though. This dog was otherworldly. He looked so stuffed, as if it was a stuffed animal. He would listen to his owner's every single command. I was impressed by it, so obviously, I started asking the man about his dog, since it would be a long and awkward trip to do in complete silence. The man was exactly like his dog, except the commands he would give to his dog. No other contribution to the conversation. He told me the dog's name, which in Romanian means the killer. It's a very weird name to give to a dog, because for this example, we would use the English word as it is, not translate to the word Romanian the name of the dog like that. But I thought, to each their own. I asked him, why such a scary name? And he bluntly replied, this dog is trained to kill. It's the only thing he likes, and the only thing he is truly good at. Personally, I consider that the dog will grow up to have a very similar personality to his owner, and most times, I would judge people with dogs on how that animal reacts to the world and to his or her owner. And let me tell you guys, these two did not give a good vibe. I brushed everything over, thinking to myself that maybe this guy is training his dog to hunt. Then, I started thinking which woods are legal to even hunt in our country. While I was thinking that, the guy, out of nowhere, asks us if we are traveling to the same national park. That was surprisingly accurate, considering that the only time we mentioned the place was in the train station, long before we ever found our seats, and way longer before we ever met this man. Again, I thought it was nothing, because in my country, people who happen to go in the same direction will try and make small talk. Guess where you are heading. Of course, you can just lie to keep safe of your destination, or be honest. I took the honesty route, and I am judging myself for that. Never be too honest with strangers, or honest at all after you read the story. We confirmed we are going to that place, asked what else is to see around, since he began talking about the area, and, well, considering we knew nothing about the place, we took it all in. He told us about the woods, the vegetation, the animals, that all we can encounter. Told us about a beautiful monastery right at the bottom base of the mountain that we need to climb. Advised us to visit the Low Tree Shore waterfall and explore the caves behind it, to try out the local restaurant. When this guy began talking about the wilderness and nature, his eyes glowed, as if he was experiencing a pleasant memory. But he also grabbed his dog's collar from the neck, squeezing it tight. The collar made a loud clink. What surprised me was the dog made no move, no whimper, no twitch, nothing. Just like a stuffed animal. Anyway, we reached our destination, said our pleasant goodbyes. The man waves at us, and we faced against him to go on our way. I turn around, back right away, because I wanted to ask where exactly that restaurant was. The man and dog were no longer there. Not just that, but his luggage was also gone. That creeped me out a bit, but who cares? We were too thrilled for our first camping experience. We start walking with our backpacks on us, 10 kilograms each, and reach a tunnel digging into the mountain. It looked amazing, exactly like those horror movie tunnels which, if traveled during night, would make your hair stand straight. Lucky for me, we traveled during a daytime. It wasn't a long tunnel. We could see the end by the time we got to the middle of it, and we hear a whimper in the distance. It sounded like a dog, crying in desperation. We stop. My boyfriend looks at me with his, "Oh no, you're not going to take that dog with us" type of face. Tries to convince me to take a different route entirely. We don't. I hear the dog. I go right towards the sound. And in the middle of the road, I see a chubby puppy with lots of white and brown circles on his butt crying so hard and laying on the cement, looking hurt, as if hit by a car. I freeze and think to myself that our trip is now over. I have to save this dog. We call for him. He looks at us, pointy ears up, gets up and like a doofus starts running desperately to us. He was alone and afraid. We called him Rudolph, and now he was our camping buddy. Like 1 kilometer further, we find another puppy, probably his sister, which we dragged from the nearby river. Someone had threw her in the river to kill her. Wet, cold, and hungry. Of course we took her too. So here we are. 10-kilogram backpacks each. 2 puppies at my chest. Boyfriend with the map, trying to find a spot to camp the first night. We passed by the monastery the man in the train had mentioned, but because we had these puppies, we could not enter in the building. The priests would not allow it, so we just walked around the property, through the gardens, until we reached the base of the mountain we had to climb. I'd like to mention that these puppies were 2 tiny little brats, because the second you put them down and forced them to walk on their own, they would slam down on the ground. We walk and walk and walk until we decide to stop because it was beginning to get late and I was starting to get cold. We found a spot next to a small landmark type cottage right in the middle of the woods. We called it Troyanitsa. It's like a scouting post, but for the church, where they place religious icons or a Bible, stuff like that, inside to bring good energy to the area. It belongs to the church. It wasn't like a house. Basically a roof with 4 small walls and an opening, not a door. You could go in, hide from the rain. There was an icon inside, and a Bible with pages ripped from it. Curious as I am, I opened the Bible, really annoyed to see that people would write down their names in it, like couples do on the tree. But one particular page, the words, "I will find you," stuck out. It was written in red ink. Again, I thought to myself that it was probably somebody who wanted to scare travelers with silly messages. I put the book back and gave it no second thought. We put up the tent, make the fire, unpack, make food and eat. We feed puppies, which are now cuddled up in our tent. And finally, darkness starts to rise all around us. My boyfriend always kept the fire up every hour, because when it went off, it felt as if all the sounds in the woods were louder and closer to us than in reality. Now it's around 12 a.m. We are all in the tent, cuddling to keep warm. The puppies wake up and start crying. I get up, unzip the tent, and put them out to pee. They do, and I get them back in. They cry some more, and the smallest one begins shivering. At the same time, I hear grunting from behind our tent. My boyfriend is up too. He hears it as well. The fire is fading. The moment he unzips the tent and steps out, the sound disappears into the woods. It sounded like a snake, slithering through the fallen leaves on the ground, but with unimaginable speed. I ask him, "Was that a snake?" He says, up to this day, he cannot explain what he saw. He says it was a slithery figure with feet that made a sort of snort sound, like when the light hit it. The puppies calmed back down after this creature ran into the woods. We try to go back to sleep after we reignite the fire. It's now 3 a.m. This time we wake up the puppies being fussy again. The fire is nearly dead, and we clearly have no idea to put up a sustaining fire. My boyfriend gets up to search for firewood, and I get out as well. I stare into the darkness, and I swear, I hear whispers coming from between the trees. I look up at the sky, considering it's only 3 a.m., and hear birds being very loud, flooding their wings. I'm no expert in birds, but don't they usually sleep around this time? Well, these weren't. They were very active, vocal, and very frustrated. I look at the fire, follow the red sparks popping out of it into the sky, and become fascinated with something. The spark doesn't seem to die. It goes on, changing color from a hellish red to green. This was very out of the ordinary for me. It created an illusion hard to explain. It looked as if the fire sparks were going into the woods, creating a track for me, probably, but to follow. I kept looking after each spark to see when it burns out. None of them did. They would levitate, turn green, and flow into the woods. At that moment, I began to get goosebumps on my skin. The birds being agitated, the mysterious light pointing us to go deeper in the woods, and all the trees around us has eyes on them. Like the trunks had a distinguished shape that looked exactly like eyes. I know this is nothing paranormal, since somebody explained that those shapes from when a branch is ripped from the root, and that's the shape that is left after. But there were so many, like 100 eyes, all looking at the exact spot we decided to camp, having only that religious tiny landmark to mentally protect us. And as I inspect my surroundings, I hear movement in one of the bushes in front of our tent, like 10 meters away from us. Obviously, I stand my ground but don't go near it. Suddenly, a dark, bent-over silhouette comes out of it and, half inside the bush, half outside, stares at us. I called my boyfriend, and we're both like, "What is that? A bear cub? A wolf? A pig?" The creature shakes its head the same way a dog does after a bath, and I hear a distinguished clink, like a dog collar. At this time, my boyfriend manages to light up the fire really big, which scares this animal to run back into the woods, through the bush from which it initially came out of. That calms us down, but not enough to ever close our eyes again during the night. Going back into the tent, my boyfriend falls asleep. The puppies are sound asleep, but not me. I keep the zipper on the tent open just a little, just enough to have my eye peek through it, right at the early mentioned bush. I think I spent a solid hour staring and falling asleep to that bush. All of a sudden, I hear a noise coming from that direction, and I immediately wake up my boyfriend, who is now peeking through the hole in complete darkness with me. What we see next still haunts me. From that exact same bush, we see a human head popping out, looking towards our tent. Note that our peeping hole was small enough to not make it look like you were being watched from the inside of the tent. This head is slowly coming out of the bush, skin white. We thought it was a ghost. After that, a shoulder, another shoulder, a full torso, a leg. Bit by bit, an entire man emerges from the bush, completely naked, lighted both by the moon and our fire. What he did next was excruciatingly scary. He comes so close to our tent and begins to remove branches, rocks, etc. from our fire, basically extinguishing our fire by dismantling it. This is all happening like 2 to 3 meters away from our tent. I look at the man with horror because I recognized him. And now the clink I heard earlier from the animal is explained. It is the same man from the train, with his dog. I don't know if he followed us. I don't know if he just went the same route as us and found us and decided to stalk us. But this guy was there with us since 12 a.m. at least, because our fire would be dead every 2 to 3 hours, and we would be woken up by the sound of branches being cracked, rocks being moved, which we internally explained as animals crossing. After he successfully managed to put out our fire, he slowly crept back into the same bush, submerging into it, bit by bit, until only his head would be out, with a very disfigured-looking mouth. You try to go back to sleep after that. We didn't know what to do, so we just got back out, reignited the fire, lit ourselves some torches, and stayed near the campfire until the first rays of sun came up. I admit that I did fall asleep while sitting down next to the fire, and so did my boyfriend, but any sound would wake us up. I was too afraid to go near that distant bush. I did not need any answers, any explanations. I just wanted a daylight to get out of there, and we did. We packed our stuff and we got out. We planned a 4-day camping trip, and this experience made us give up after that first night. It was a risk we did not intend to take. If that thing followed us, or it was just a coincidence, it was more than enough. As a conclusion to my story, and advice to any first-time campers out there, never tell your location, or even areas close to your destination, to strangers. Anyway, stay safe. Always be aware of your surroundings, and any changes that come to you under the form of sounds, movements, changes of temperature, and so on.